Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. If you find us on YouTube today, don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any more of these conversations. If you are on a podcast platform, please subscribe and share this conversation. My guest today is going to be talking about how at any age you can achieve your dream because you're never too old. She left her corporate job at 57 to start her art in earnest, and it really started to take off at 62. My guest today is Kat Rains. She's a mixed media collage artist and art teacher. Kat, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Gina. I'm honored that you invited me to be on your show.
I am really excited. I'm obviously passionate about art, and I'm passionate about women who do things of a certain age. You know, we have these conversations so often about, is it too late? Am I too old? Did I miss my opportunity? And I love when I meet women like yourself who are like doing the thing and able to say, see, it can be done. And I'm really encouraged by that example. And I'd love to have you tell a little bit about your story so people know who you are and how this came about.
Sure, thank you. So my story actually started way before age 57. I was in a successful job. And I was being rewarded for this job, but I hated my job. I was pretty unhappy. I was 33 years old, and I had never done art in my life, not even taken an art class, in grade school. But I was very stressed out, so I started doing career development on myself. And by the way, I was a career counselor, so that's what I did for a living. So one of the things I used to do with my students, because I worked in a college, is you make a list of all the things you did as a kid, but weren't told to do it. So I made this huge long list of things that I did, like kick the can and make forts and play school. And in the middle of the list was the word collage. And I have a picture of myself as a 10-year-old with the only collage I'd ever made. But I saved this picture, like it was on my bulletin board. And I was like, okay, there's got to be something here. So one Sunday I pulled all the catalogs together in the house. I created a collage, and I just blew up. My heart just like expanded. I went, oh my God. By the way, it was an awful collage by my standards now, but then it was my soul. It was my soul on the piece of paper. So I started doing it every single day, and I made hundreds of these things over a 3-year period. I started framing them and surrounded my office with them. And my colleagues and students would come in and say, oh, you have children. I don't have children. And for some reason, this didn't bother me. But this went on for a long time. And I just kept, working. But I kept dreaming in the background that, wouldn't it be great to do something like that just lit you up like that? So eventually I did leave that job. I went to another job that I liked much more. And at that point, I took my very first art class. I was 37 at that point, and I took it from a magazine collage artist. And in a 5-day period, I went from pretty juvenile to not bad. So from that moment on, when I realized, I could make professional looking pieces that other people might like, I was on a campaign. So I was working this other job, took 4 years. I was on the road. It was a teaching job on the road, corporate training. And all 4 years, I was making art on the side and researching how do people make money as an artist, because I'm not going to be a starving one. I'm going to be a thriving one. So after 4 years, at age 40, I quit my corporate job for the first time, and I became a full-time artist. And I did it for 4 years. And it was a fabulous thing, and it was a horrible thing simultaneously because, I needed to make a living. I did have a partner, who had health insurance for us, but there was never an intention that I was just going to not make money. I needed to contribute to the household. So I was very stressed, even though I loved the art. It was phenomenal. I loved doing the art, but trying to figure out how to make a living from that art was quite the challenge. I did make a living, but it was, 7 days a week, 11-hour days, consistently for years. Mm-hmm. At the 4-year point of this, I was just beginning to get it. Like I had a good following. I was doing the art fair circuit, making, a decent amount of money. I had one woman shows, so I was so-called making it. And I got breast cancer out of the blue. I was 44 and I had no history. I was incredibly healthy at the time, but breast cancer turned into, and I knew it at the time that it was happening. It was an incredible blessing because it kind of stopped me in my tracks. It was like, do you really want to live your life like this? Yeah, the art's perfect. It's wonderful. But what I was doing to myself to try to make a living with art was really painful. So just coincidentally, if you believe in coincidence, which I don't, my old corporate job called me back and said, we'd like to have you come back and do a similar job. So they were giving me a contract to travel across the country 45 weeks a year, different city every week. I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll come back for a year. I'm not going to tell you that I'm quitting after a year, but my intention was to leave after 1 year. I'll just take the money and go back to art. So 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3. And at the 10-year mark, I am traveling every week, having a blast, by the way. My day gig is teaching the Myers-Briggs. It's a personality assessment. So it was fabulous work. I was, affecting people's lives. It was great, but I was doing no art at all because I was traveling. I was living out of a suitcase. So at the 10-year mark, this was New Year's 2015, I sat myself down and just gave myself a big talking to. I said, I didn't want to leave my corporate job. Mainly, it was just, it's hard to leave that kind of job when you like it. I love it, actually. But my art was my life, and I had given that life up. So I came up with this outrageous plan to bring art back into my life. So here's the plan. So every day of the week, 7 days a week, I was going to get up at 5 a.m. Didn't matter what day it was, 5 a.m. I'd take an hour and a half in the morning to get my life together, eat, do what you got to do. And then at 6:30, if I was home at 6:30 in the morning, I had to be in my studio, which is in my home, do art for like 3 hours maybe. And then I would do my corporate job from my office at home the rest of the day. If I was on the road, which is a good part of the time, I traveled with 2 50-pound suitcases. And one of those suitcases was a traveling art studio. So I had about 20 pounds of paint because I now had added paint to my collages. I had drop cloths, I had canvases, everything I needed to do art in any size hotel room. Didn't matter what it looked like. And I did that. And so by the way, I do my corporate job all day long. And then by 7 p.m. every day, the goal was I would be in my little makeshift art studio and I would do art at least 3 hours, if not till midnight. And that's what I did. And I did it for 3 years solid. And I produced a hell of a lot of art and I started selling it again. And at the end of the 3 years, by the way, the whole time that I was doing it, I was asking the universe, when am I quitting? You got to tell them, but make it clear. I'm not going to jump ship like I did last time. Because although it was the right thing to do when I was 40, I didn't want to be stressed like that again. So I just kept saying, make it damn clear. I don't want a little clear. I want to know exactly that I should jump. So at age 57, the company I was working for offered me a contract that allowed me to work 1 week a month. And by the way, I've been asking him this for a long time. Like, let me go part-time. I don't want to work like this, but it was all or nothing. And all of a sudden they let me do this. And so at age 57, I got to work 1 week a month. And by the way, I still do that to this day. I work 1 week a month. It's phasing out because art is really everything to me. And doing the day job is distracting, even though I like it a lot. So age 57, I quit and I gave myself a full year. I'd saved my money, by the way. I'd saved every dime I could possibly, the whole time. It was 12 years on the road. I saved everything I could because I knew I wanted to go back. So I gave myself a year to just dive into art and explore everything because I'd only known myself as a collage artist. That's what I thought I was, but I thought, suppose I'm more than that. Suppose I'm a portrait artist. Maybe I'm a landscape artist. Maybe I'm a watercolor. I don't know. I've never tried those things. So what I did is I literally went for any kind of class that just sparked my interest. It didn't matter what it was. It didn't have to have any kind of connection to anything else. I have a collection of art that's unbelievable, but nothing goes with anything. I've got all kinds of paintings, every technique you can possibly do. And I did, and 1 year turned into 2 years, 2 years solid of just taking classes, having the time of my life. I loved it. And then at the end of the 2 years, I took an art class from someone who was actually combining painting and collage. And I was like, oh my God, that was it all along. It's always been collage. I just wanted to add it. I had never added paint to my collages before. It just like totally blew my head open. And then I spent another 2 years after that. I mean, it took a while for me to really find where do I want to do this? And COVID was really the turning point with it. Because I had so much time. My 1 week a month job went away for a bit because, a lot of our jobs went away. So I just had a lot of time. And interestingly enough, around that time, I did have a collection that was a mixed media paint collection. I loved it. I thought it was spectacular. And I did a very sophisticated job of launching it online. And the day it launched, it was a 30-piece collection. I sold, I think, 2 pieces maybe. I was completely devastated. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. It took me a year to make that collection, a year. And I sold 2 pieces. But it was the biggest gift because if I can't sell my best work, then I have permission to make anything I want. So what I realized I had been doing is making art to sell. I want to make a living as an artist. So although I think it's good work, and I still think it's good work, they eventually sold, by the way, but it took a long time. It was like a year and a half for them to sell. If I can't sell those, then make anything you want. So when I started just making anything I wanted from the idea, it's not going to sell anyways, just make what you want. It started selling immediately. And then I started having sellout launches online. And that's when people started asking me if I taught. And I ignored them. I ignored that for about 2 years. No, I don't teach. I sell art, I make art. And then I realized, why aren't I teaching it? So that's been my most recent kind of realization, that you can actually combine selling your own art and teaching art. And it actually helps you make an abundant living as an artist. So
I think it's
story.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating because as I'm listening to you, and I'm of course filtering it through, what are the things that it takes to make a shift? And what I'm hearing is, first of all, there's breadcrumbs along the way. There's those inklings that you followed. There's things that got kind of put on the back burner, like the teaching thing, you just kept pushing it off, but that pursued you, And I think when people are doing something so different, there's an ability to tune in that needs to be developed, I think, because when we live in a world that's very structured, whether you stayed home and raised a family, that's a very structured environment. You have certain tasks and roles and you get into a rhythm of life, cleaning, laundry, shopping, cooking, calendaring your life. You're basically an executive secretary for however many people live in your house.
Right.
Or you go the business route and you have the projects and the deadlines and the calendaring and the traveling, same thing. So it's like we get on a pattern. So I feel like when I talk to someone like yourself, when we talk about this second half, it's like a paradigm shift sometimes, really, for most of us to get off of maybe the security, the comfort of this one way.
Yeah,
and take some risks.
It's hard to do, which is why I eased into it by doing it around my corporate job. Because, when they talk about golden handcuffs, if you're in a corporate life, financially, I'm not saying every corporate job is financially lucrative, but a lot of them are. They're giving you good health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And leaving it, that's why I didn't want to leave it right away, because who would leave a job when you're being paid? In fact, my husband kept saying, "Are you sure you want to?" He asked me over and over again because, I had the juiciest job. I'm training across the country with these glamorous companies, and
And
but
enjoying it. I mean, it's not even that
and
you.
enjoying it and
Mhm.
enjoying it. It wasn't like, but it was hard. I mean, I'm never home. I'm living out of a suitcase, but I never complained. That's part of my kind of MO. I'm never going to complain where I am because I'm choosing to be here. So I'm just
Mhm.
going to be present for it. But still, I was missing parts of my life. I was missing girlfriend dinners
Mhm.
because I was always traveling. I'd come home one night, repack my suitcase, and I'm out to another city the next day. And that's perfectly fine. But in the back of my head, I was always, the whole 12 years, it was 12 years on the road, never thinking it was going to be 12 years ever. But I never stopped asking my higher power, universe, whatever you call that, just tell me when. I'm going to listen this time. Because the last time I listened, but I jumped too soon.
Mhm.
To me, I knew I needed to go when it was crystal clear, when all kind of like all the things lined up. And I wanted to jump a million times. There was so many times I wanted to go. But for me, it's just being consistent. Like if I say I'm going to do something, if I say I love art, this is what I want to do. Well, how are you going to do it then? Because, I think a job or motherhood or whatever it is you have in your life is not an excuse not to do pieces of it. How much TV we watch, how much time do we waste scrolling, and that's what I decided I was cutting out. I cut out these pockets of things that I was doing. TV doesn't mean a thing to me. Scrolling means even less, so what can I cut out to make
Mhm.
time for what's so important to me without disrupting my life? I didn't give up
Mhm.
my corporate job, and I didn't get to start till I was 57, but to me that was the year, that was the ideal year. That was the year I was supposed to start for some odd reason. I look at women who are starting in their 30s and I go, wouldn't that be great to actually do your passion in your 30s? But that wasn't my calling. I had to follow what my life was telling me I had to do. And it's different for every single person, right?
I think that's good encouragement because it can be discouraging depending on how dissatisfied someone is. The comparison trap could make us feel more behind than we actually are. Because being behind, I feel like, is a frame of mind, not a reality. In other words, like to your point, your journey was what it was.
Mhm.
And whether it was, quote, right or wrong, who's to say? But we can't go back and change it anyway. Like it's a moot point and it's a waste of energy to feel those things and live in that space of regret when you can take action today.
Yeah. It's like, what small thing can you, or how can you slightly alter your routine? Because that's all I did. I did put a lot of art in my life, but my life was very full when I did that.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I had free time, but I found free time to do what meant most to me in my life. But
And I think you sacrificed something in the process, which was scrolling, staring at the walls, watching a movie, whatever, and I think it's not all rainbows and unicorns, but I think it sounds like the sacrifice actually fueled your fire. It kept that passion alive.
yeah, it gave me a sense of that. The thing is, Gina, I never knew it was going to happen. So when I was doing it, this outrageous schedule, I didn't know I was actually going to be able to quit my job. I was on the retirement track. I could have still been full time right now doing that work and socking away money. But my rationale was, how much money do I want? It's not like I was rich or anything, but how much money in the bank is enough so that I could, now I don't say, well, by the way, I haven't saved money until now. All these years, how many years has been, like 5 years? I haven't been able to until just recently, because now I'm making an abundant income as an artist. But until then, I was not. I was figuring it out. I was putting out collections. I was learning the ropes of how do you really make a living as an artist. And I just really figured it out. January was kind of like my entry into, like, okay, we can do this. I can make money, all my money, this way.
I think too, there's a rhythm to it because sometimes things outside of our plan come into play? And we can talk about that a little bit with you. You were sharing with me before we hit record, we were talking about your YouTube channel, the way that you love to teach. And I had taken a free 5-day course after your PR person reached out to me. I thought, I need to check this person out. And of course, I've been playing around with all of your incredible content. And it's like, one of those things that came along for you was people asked you if you were going to teach, and you said, no, no, no. But now, isn't that the bulk of your business?
Yeah. And it's funny because I like teaching more than I like making art now. Now I'm sure I'll go back to making art. There'll be a season for that as well. But now I see, so that to answer your question, I think that's one of the whispers. Like I had never considered that, because that is what I did for my professional life, so-called professional life, because this is my professional life to me. But I think, one step at a time, that's how I found my voice. I found my voice by just a little bit at a time. I follow that, even if it means I crochet, or, like whatever things that don't look like they should be on the path. That's what I did, because I guess it's following what fascinates me. And by following and that's how I found collage in the first place. It's like, I have this one memory, I'm going to collage, even though I have no idea how to do this thing. So it's always been that way, and I did take 10 years off to do no art at all. And that was part of the path too. I had to take a break, I guess. I would have loved to have done art the whole time, but it's not what my path was calling me to do.
I would say that every decision leads you somewhere, right? And it doesn't make a decision wrong. And sometimes the break reminds us of what we're missing too. So it's like everything is kind of conspiring together in our life, if we look at it that way, to bring us somewhere that's new and joyful and gives us a different perspective. I think it's interesting. And because you do the Myers-Briggs, I would love to just touch on that a little bit. You still do that, right? I hear you on your videos talk about, I had to take my business shirt off to do my business jacket off to do the video. What is it about that you enjoy?
Well, ironically, the art and the Myers-Briggs for me do the same thing, which is kind of like my life's purpose has always been to inspire people to step into who they really want to be. And the Myers-Briggs is the same thing. It's just not a physical art form. It's inspiring people to know themselves at a higher level. And my art has always been the same thing. It's my art first inspires me. I do it. I love it. It connects me to me. But then when it goes to somebody else, my art my art doesn't live with me. It's meant for somebody else. I know, like I title my artworks to inspire other people, they choose it as much by the title as by the artwork. So it's the same thing, Myers-Briggs and art. So they've actually worked beautifully together.
I was going to say, it feels congruent to some degree, in terms of just plucking principles out of what you're sharing with me. The person that you are and the things that you love, it might look like a huge shift, but it really is very similar in terms of where Kat shows up and what draws Kat into loving what she does. Yeah.
Right. And Myers-Briggs, like the kind of the central thing so beautiful about it is it helps people become more aware of what they do easy and natural. Like, how are you hardwired? And so when you know that, that's part of the small whispers you listen to. So if I'm naturally good at coming up with ideas, okay, I need to be in a place where I can come up with ideas. So it's just part of helping people figure out what their pattern is, what their life is. And now teaching art is the same thing. Now I'm part of the catalyst to help other people step into their artistic selves, assuming that's the path that they feel called to do. I don't think art is necessarily for every person, but I try to make it accessible for people, so if someone felt inspired, it's something that they can easily step into without a lot of supplies or any skill at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know if I told you, but part of before I was 33, when I discovered art, my little tagline for myself was, I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I mean, how many people have said that? And I meant it, because I couldn't draw or paint. That meant I couldn't be an artist. That's why I chose collage, because you don't have to draw or paint with collage. And I just meet so many people that say that all the time. They think they're not an artist. And I would propose that we all are. We may not all be interested in art. That may not be something that fascinates you. I have in fact, I have very few friends that are artists. Most people are other kind of creatives, like they're writers or they're counselors or, podcasters. They're other kind of creative people, equally as important in the world.
Which I think is, to your point, expanding the idea of art. When you create something, whether you create beautiful meals, beautiful home, beautiful gardens, beautiful garments, some people are so great at putting on events for their friends, like, if you go to their house and they're having a tea, let's say, it's not going to be the way I would do it. Come to my house, it'll be yummy food and tea, but it's probably not going to look like you went to a tea house.
Right.
But this is the thing. I think we're all created to create, but to your point, not necessarily as a living. And art, which I love that you said this, we have minimized art to drawing and painting, which obviously is art, but art is so much more than that. And maybe we go from art to creativity to maybe broaden the conversation a little bit more for people, because I think like going to your YouTube and is a way for people to play and just remove the expectations of the job, of the family and everything, and lose themselves in something creative. And so I think, I know we're kind of going off on a side conversation, but really I think what you do is you just empower people to tap into a part of themselves that's joyful. And it's actually really a place of, it can be a place of relaxation if we just don't worry about the outcome.
Right. And that's part of, I should say part of, that is the reason I chose collage, because collage is so accessible. You don't necessarily have to have so-called skill, although, with very simple techniques, you can have a hell of a lot of skill. I mean, you can actually build something very beautiful, great from the very first time you try. That's what's so amazing to me. Like, you just give people parameters. Like, I want you to use these papers to make this piece of collage, and these are the rules, and everyone can do it. And it's just, and people who think they never ever could make a collage make gorgeous pieces at the very beginning. They just need some parameters, some guidelines, So it's, yes, that is the whole thing, is empowering people to step into who they are, and it's not necessarily an artist, it's empowering people to just see other parts of themselves, because I don't, being a full-time artist, it's not for everybody. I mean, it's a hard route a lot of the time, because, you have to sell your art in some way. You've got to sell what you do. And is that not for everybody.
But we are thinking about the potential in this process that you're talking about. What is our potential? We've had a dialogue around, in the past, it's all downhill from here at a certain age, right? You remember how everybody used to be like, oh, just so upset about certain birthdays, like literally physically depressed because they turn a certain age, and it's all downhill from here. And this is what I'm passionate about, is it's only downhill if you want it to be downhill.
Right.
So when I reach forward to someone like you, it's like, okay, we're not just these are not affirmations. These are realities. There's women out there who are doing the things that are in their heart to do, and their path is not straight, but it's like following, when the sun sets and you can see the haze, but you're not exactly sure where the sun is, right? if you're following that sun, that's kind of how I see this journey of midlife for some people. Some people know, but most of us are still in that process of figuring it out as we go.
Yeah. By the way, that relates to the Myers-Briggs, because there are certain personality types. I'm one of them, and I think you are, where we just kind of like go with where the energy takes us and just trust that we're being led to the right place without a destination in mind. That's always been my path. Like, I didn't know where I was headed exactly. I really don't know where I'm headed right now. I mean, I know what I love to do. And I know that I'm good at teaching, and I'm good at creating art, and I'm just putting them together. But will I be doing this in 5 years? I don't know. So I don't make long-term goals, and I haven't for decades. It's universe, God, what do you want me? How do you want me to serve now?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the best use of my time and energy that I could affect the greater good? So but by the way, I'm about 50% of the population. We're talking Myers-Briggs. The other 50% of the population gets a goal, they go for the goal, and they go straight for it. And I think that's incredible. I've just never had that hard wiring. And it doesn't work for me, by the way. When I have set a goal and gone for it, it's always the wrong goal. Always. Because the goal actually was made from my head. It was from this ego place. And so I've gotten myself in really successful places a couple different times, but when I get there, I don't like it. So, but when I backtrack and actually start just following what sounds interesting, what's good, day to day, moment to moment, then even though it doesn't look like I have a track, it looks like, what is she doing? Like, if you would see me the first 3 years as a full-time artist, starting at 57, you're like, is she just like a hobby? Like, is she just doing this for a hobby to play? Like, she did her corporate life, now she's going to play. I was never playing. I was always following what sounded interesting. And I just had some kind of inner faith that it was leading me somewhere, even if it meant I was going to do it as a hobby. I didn't care. I was going to do what sounded interesting day to day. Still.
It takes courage to allow ourselves that. I think it feels risky or uncomfortable. I think, just talking to different people, it's like, oh, I could never do that. I don't know how to do that, or I wouldn't know where to start. And what you're saying is you don't have to know where you're going or where exactly to start, because where you're supposed to start is where you start. Like, It's not like there's this list out there that we're all trying to follow. It's not like that.
For at least some of us. I think there are people that are very directed that way. It just doesn't work for me because I've tried it. I don't get to where I want to go. From the very beginning when I found art, it's always been, what sounds good? Like, if you could do anything, what would you do? And when I don't do that, like, I made a collection because I thought it was sellable. Yeah, it was sellable eventually. But did I like it? Did I have fun? Was it worth my time?
Right.
When I stopped, so I have to be reminded every now and then, because our society is goal directed. You pick a goal, you go for it, you're successful.
Got your SMART goals. Gotta set those SMART goals.
And it just doesn't work for me. I mean, it's not like I don't have a plan. I got like a list on my wall here. These are the 10 things I would love to accomplish this year, but I'm very kind to myself. Like, they're just, there's not enough hours in the day to do this list. So the way that I do set so-called goals, but I would call them intentions. Like, these are the things that my brain thinks would be fun to do, that I think I should be doing. And then I go one thing at a time. So I put them in order, and I tackle one project at a time. And very often, I realize as I'm doing it, oh, you know what? That's not going to work. Like, I was going to release a collection this year, and and I realized there's no energy behind it. Even the collection's done, by the way. I have a collection that's ready to go, but I don't really want to, so I'm going to. Maybe it'll live with me forever. Maybe I'll give it away to people. But at the moment, what fascinates me, and that's what I go for. Like, what it's just like lighting me up. And right now, believe it or not, is YouTube. I am so fascinated by figuring it out. It's like this massive puzzle. How do you crack the code? I've cracked the code on Instagram for the most part. And now it's just juicy. It's just so fun to try to figure out.
To marry the two things that you do, the Myers-Briggs, if people don't know about it, is I don't know if you call it a personality test. Give us the elevator speech to what Myers-Briggs is and how it's beneficial for someone who is going through this process.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs is a personality tool, and it doesn't measure who you are, but it measures how you're hardwired. Like, this is what comes easy and natural to you. So if you have awareness of what it's like right and left-handedness, so I'm right-handed. I can write with my left hand, though. I'm not that great at it, but I can use both hands. So with the Myers-Briggs, it literally helps you identify, are you right or left-handed in 4 different dimensions. So if I know that, I can position my life more into the things that I'm hardwired for, with full understanding that many times I have to do my left hand. In fact, all day long, I have to do my left hand, but I'm not as good at it. So what I find a lot of people do, and I used to be a career counselor, so this is what I used to help people with, is they choose a career based on how much money they can get, or how much the demand is for the job, which is totally legitimate. The problem is that many people choose careers that are outside of how they're hardwired. So they end up in jobs that make them stressed because they're constantly working with their opposite hand. And so the idea of Myers-Briggs is, let's see if we can just realign you, into how you're hardwired in the first place.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that question is because I happen to know my Myers-Briggs. I don't know what you call it, but I'm my profile and, my Enneagram and all of that. And it's very fascinating because sometimes we have stories around ourselves that people tell us, teachers, coaches, parents, friends. And sometimes when you take something like that, it can contextualize things maybe you thought about yourself, or areas that maybe confused you, because if you think you're something, but you're actually not that thing, you're only that thing because somebody decided to tell you you're that thing.
Or you built a skill.
Yeah. And so at this stage of life, it's kind of empowering to go, oh, yeah. I mean, I've known for years, but I could see someone who maybe hasn't used this resource as an opportunity to understand themselves so that they can, the whispers that you talk about could be coming from that hardwiring, but they don't know.
Right. Right. Because they've been cultured out of it in many cases. I was cultured out of mine. So I had parents that were, they meant well, but they saw me and they thought she'll be more successful if we train her to do it our way, which I think is pretty normal for parents to do. So I learned it a certain way. And it wasn't until my late 40s that, even though I was training people on the Myers-Briggs, that I fully embraced who I really was, because there was we get messages all the time just from being our gender, our ethnicity, our who taught us in school, our parents, the country, our partners. We're getting messages all the time, and they may be congruent with our hardwiring, but often they're not. And that was true for me. So I think that's probably part of the reason why I was a late bloomer, because I had a very clear message of what I was supposed to be, and I did what I was supposed to be. And it took me a long time to learn how to read those signs. And really, it started when I was 33. I was just like, is this what life is supposed to be? You're supposed to be stressed all the time, like, fighting with reality, basically. And it's interesting what I've learned now, in adulthood, is that it doesn't really matter where I am. I am going to accept reality. Like, this is so like when I was traveling for 12 years and I really wanted to do art, I was traveling, but I would never, ever say, I wish I were home doing art. And I meant it, because I've chosen to do this. Therefore, you're going to be fully in this. And, people would come up to me while I was traveling because they want to know that this glamorous traveling life is not so good. They want to know that. So they say, isn't it hard? And I would go, well, I get tired, and I'd love to have more time with my women friends and my partner. And this is the perfect place. for however long this is going to last, this is where I'm meant to be. Even if it was the most horrible day in the world, I mean it, because I wouldn't be here. Well, I wouldn't be in this place if I wasn't meant to be here. Like this today is the day I'm supposed to be in Cincinnati, or I'd be back in North Carolina. So it's been that way for a long time. There's like deep acceptance of, even though I have a dream, the dream has always been to be a full-time artist since as long as I can remember. For some reason, it wasn't meant to be. And by the way, there were clear signs it wasn't meant to be. Like I knew it. Like I got divorced at one point. I had to have a job. As much as I think art is wonderful, you got to have health insurance, and so having a job and having independence, being able to buy a house, that was pretty important. You can have a co-person in your life. So it wasn't time to do art, and there are many signs like that. It's how can you be fully accepting of what's life has given you right now. And what life gave me was, you got to be on the road for 12 years and you're going to be away from this thing that you absolutely love, and you're going to love where you are. Even when you get layovers and you have to spend the night in Cleveland, when you want to be home, that's where you're supposed to be in Cleveland. So be there.
So it's kind of it's a yieldedness to the process as it's going, because it is very easy to want to set a target, hit it, set a target, hit it, set a target, hit it,
And I think it works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for me.
But I feel like that's what we're taught is supposed to happen.
Absolutely. That's our culture. And that's also based on the Myers-Briggs, by the way. But that's 50% of the population that works amazing for.
Yeah.
My part of the population,
not so much.
I did it. Well, I left my job when I was 40 to become a full-time artist. I had a target. I'm doing it. When are you going to do it except when you're 40, right? Do it. It wasn't the right time. So I've learned you don't jump before you feel like it's clear. Okay, now, and it may not get clear. Where you are is maybe where you're supposed to be. Maybe acceptance of reality. And so that's where I was constantly coming back to, accept where you are, because it's not clear. When it gets clear, then I'll move.
That's good advice.
And I want crystal clear, not like a little inkling clear.
So if you were to give 3 encouragements to my listeners today around this idea of midlife reinvention and shifting paths, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
The first would be, right now, what just fascinates you? Don't make it big. Maybe what fascinates you is making a pie right now, or learning how to crochet. By the way, I have paint by numbers down in my home because I am fascinated by paint by numbers. I'm never going to do anything with these, but they give me joy when I do it. So I guess that's the first thing, is not to make it this big lofty thing of reinventing. Instead, in this moment, what would just light you up? Even if it's going for Starbucks. By the way, I love going to Starbucks for a cup of coffee. I don't know why. I love sitting in Starbucks. There's nothing about it. But that is the small whispers. Like, follow what lights you up in really small ways. And then the second is there a way to fully accept where you are right now, whatever it looks like? I've had some pretty bad things. We didn't even talk about any of the bad things. I've had what looks like really bad things, but I've kind of trained myself not to deny them, but to get rid of the words around them. You have this monkey voice that goes, I don't want to be here. Why are we here? I want to do something else. Oh, my dream is something else. It's like this I call it lizard brain that just goes on and on and on. And I'm not perfect at this at all, but when I hear that complaining voice, whether it's in traffic or whether it's, I wish I were going faster, how come I'm not being accepted into the show, whatever, I don't care what it is. I go, I know you do, honey. Shh. It's just a little part of me. It's like a little child that's having wants to be heard, wants to have a tantrum. So to silence the voice as often as possible so that you can fully be in the life you already have. Because I've been in the most horrible jobs before. They're earlier in my life, horrible. And the way out of them is just to be where you are. Like fully accept, this is where I am now. Not to see the good in it. Like I don't go around going, oh, let's look at how positive this is. I look at, let me just get rid of the commentary and just be in the job or be in my home, be with a relationship that I probably should not be in. But can I just be there and then just follow little signs to where I need to go next, as opposed to make it this huge, lofty thing. And third is a really obvious one, is there is no timeline here. The timeline is made up. That, you know, I think I've made it probably 5 times in my life. You know, if I only, you know, I found I've had things I wanted to do and I've got those things and I've got it right now too, but it's not the end game. I'm expecting to have another game. I don't know what it is. I'm thinking it'll probably be with art because now I've finally kind of got momentum in one direction, but I'm giving myself permission that it may not be that. You know, maybe I'll end up walking on a beach every single day and that will be what fascinates me. So I just don't think there's a one place we're supposed to be, that it's more that our timeline is made up, that we can always, every day, go for that thing that just kind of lights us up for the moment, whether it's having a coffee at Starbucks or doing a paint by number or baking a pie or taking an art class. You know, that little thing is the sign, even if we never do another thing with it, because that somehow will lead somewhere else that we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be right here, exactly where we already are.
Yeah. And like you said, it removes that pressure that we put on ourselves so we can just appreciate and see the possibilities. It's that pressure we put on ourselves that shuts our brain's ability to identify things down.
Right. Because when our brain is doing this, like, I'm not successful enough, I should know what I'm doing, I need to go here, I need to be like her. Our brain is so full of crap that we can't hear where we're going to go. We have no ability to hear the truth. And so that's like pretty much my most important thing in life is to constantly quiet my mind all the time, because it loves to be dramatic. It loves to tell me, you know, you should be doing this, you have too much to do. I mean, today I've got tons on my list, but that's just my dramatic head. You know, the reality is I just love sitting here with you.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I got to do is be here with you.
Yeah. And there's, you know, it quiets the static on the line. If you can just be.
Right. And hear the truth.
Kat, how can people find you?
Well, my name, catrains.artist on Instagram, and almost the same, my website, catherinerains.com. And I want to encourage people to take the class that you took. So I've got a free 5-day class for people people who have never done art in their life have taken it and produced great collages from the get-go. And also seasoned artists are taking it because they're adding to their toolbox of what they know how to do. So that's probably one of the best ways to, at least if there are people are interested, if that is the inkling that they're calling for, like, oh, what's collage? That's a nice way to dip your toe into it. And the same thing is on YouTube, by the way. So it's catrains.artist on YouTube or Instagram.
Okay. All right. Well, Kat, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. You have such an incredible gift at what you do. I've had the opportunity to take that 5-day course and to watch your YouTube videos. And I can see how much you love to teach and how much you desire to share that joy that you have with people. And I love your message of just trusting the process, sitting in this moment and allowing a little bit more. I just love the way that you communicated your story. I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, because there are other women who need to hear another woman's walk so that they can be empowered to take their own. So thank you so much for doing that for us.
Gina, thank you for having me here and allowing me to share my story, because that helps me to fulfill what I'm supposed to be doing step by step. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Friends, today, if you find us on YouTube, just look down below. I will have the links to Kat there and that 5-day course so that you can take it. It is a blast. I promise you. It's so much fun. I encourage you to do it. But if you're on a podcast platform and you're driving, you can go to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 339, and all the links will be there. Friends, this conversation was had Selfishly for me, because I love talking to other artists, but also because we need to see women doing the things we talk about, the potential happening in our lives, in somebody else's life. Kat is reflecting back to us the potential and the opportunities that each of us have to move forward through life in a way that feels right, to make those shifts, to take those leaps, or to follow the whispers, or to pick up the crumbs. However you choose to see it, this is something that you can do if you want to. There are potential opportunities for you every day to move in a direction that feels good, that feeds your curiosity, that really just trip your trigger. And they don't have to have any other purpose. It doesn't, like she said, have to be this giant thing. It doesn't have to be anything too precious or too big. It can just be, what brings me joy today? And allow yourself to begin to tap in. And I would say, if you haven't done something like the Enneagram test or the Myers-Briggs test, it is a really fascinating way to understand yourself and help you to live a life that's in alignment with how you've been designed. So that's something to think about as well. Friends, I want to thank you for joining us today, for taking the time to listen. I ask that if you enjoyed this, that you will subscribe and share this conversation. Let's let more women know about other women we can link arms with, so that we can create a community of encouragement and empowerment. Thank you so much for being here today. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.